Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, and this is Power and Politics, the conversation that goes deep into some of the issues that are impacting you the most, talking to a variety of people, the elected officials, the advocates, and everyone in between. Today we speak with Blake Gendebien, the Democratic nominee in New York's 21st Congressional District in the case that there is a special election. We speak to him about a lot of issues, including being a farmer, that's what he is, and close to the North Country border there. Also, what the impact of tariffs could be on farmers, immigration is one of the issues, and also if he would vote like Chuck Schumer did to keep the government open on a very controversial spending bill. You can listen to Power and Politics wherever you get your podcasts or watch on YouTube at CBS 6 Albany. So Blake Gendebien joins us now. He is the Democratic candidate in New York's 21st Congressional District. Blake, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
I'm really happy to be here.
You know, obviously there was a process for you to get to this point. What were some of the things the committee wanted out of you and representing them here?
Yeah, so the committee really wanted a pragmatic reflection of the district. And that's what I am. Born and raised in Lisbon, went to Lisbon Central School, grew up on a dairy farm, participated in many local activities, have a broad network through the district and through my community. That's what the chairs were looking for, somebody that really could represent everybody and make a bigger tent.
What was the process like for you doing this?
Yeah, it was exciting. It was a real learning process for me because I'm trying to farm, right? Stay connected to my farm, but also learn all the steps. And I had some terrific advice from friends in the dairy industry. And my goal was I knew that I had one audience. It was the 15 county chairs.
Yeah.
And so I got to know them. I got to learn what their interests were and what they needed. And I provided as much information as I could. And of course, it was really important to demonstrate that I could generate interest and generate enthusiasm and generate support. And that's what we did. And I'm very thankful and grateful that they selected my campaign, and they selected it unanimously. And it made it easy for me so I could get started and have a little additional runway to get my name out there. That was critical, and I really appreciate the work they did.
Yeah, obviously the timing is interesting, and it's been part of the conversation here of when you were selected in comparison to what the other side of the aisle has been doing. When would you want this election, the special election, to happen?
Well, it would be great if Elise resigns in the first week of April, and then we kind of stretch it out 90 days from there, 80, 90 days from there. It'll be fine. We're going to win no matter when it is, but that gives us proper timing, a sense of what we're doing, and that would be terrific.
Any reaction, or do you think it would be better if it was until November? I know that was put on the table by even the governor and talked about a couple weeks ago at this point because of resources, because of turnout. Would that be a scenario you'd be acceptable to?
So Washington and Albany do a lot of political games, and that's what I feel like that was. That felt like political gamesmanship. And New York 21, the North Country, my friends and neighbors, we want representation now. We want it as fast as possible. So let's stick with the current law and just get it done. Stick to our 90 days and have it end of June, early July.
I know that you've had an opportunity to respond to it. We wanted to make sure you had the platform to be able to do it here. After you were announced, the Republican Party brought back and interviewed it in 2013. I'm sure you've talked much about it since then. The interview, you had some different comments. In case people haven't seen it, we'll make sure you can see it. You can still read it right now. You talked about some of the people in Lisbon and said when you were trying to hire workers, it's hard to find someone that doesn't have domestic abuse problems, alcohol problems, things of that nature. And I believe you at the time said it was taken out of context. Or why did you say that to begin with? And I have another follow-up question to that applies to today. But first, the first question.
Thank you for the question. That is an old interview. I wasn't a politician, and I'm not a politician now. I was a struggling dairy farmer, and it was very hard to find help, just like many other small businesses. And it's really unfortunate that D.C. does not want somebody from the North Country. They're digging up a 15-year-old, honest, plain-spoken interview from a dairy farmer talking about the struggles of farming in the North Country. And instead of playing gotcha with something that's nearly 15 years old, I'm here to focus on affordability, immigration reform, supporting small businesses, and making sure that our seniors, our veterans, and our families and our children have the health care that they need in rural America.
Do you think here in 2025, as you mentioned, it was 15, 12 years ago, whatever it was, more than a decade ago,
oh, yeah.
Are people there in the district still struggling with those types of issues that you mentioned back then?
So what I have done is I've participated in the BOCES program. Since that time, I have had several apprentices from their welding shop, and they're terrific, and they've all actually come to work for me afterwards. The BOCES program is an amazing program for the North Country. In fact, a young man named Grady is going to start in the next couple of weeks, and I hope that he continues to work for us through the apprenticeship as well.
How then do you want to apply that to your potential being a representative in New York 21? And would you want to enhance that program? Are there other ideas you have that would, you believe, help apply to some of these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that bringing our BOCES program and expanding all those technical opportunities for kids is a wonderful opportunity because we have so many baby boomers that are retiring, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and there are these wonderful opportunities for young people to come right out of trade school and get a terrific job in the North Country.
You know, and that question back then was asking, what's your workforce made up of, I guess? How do you divide labor? How do you do that today?
Yeah, so we've hired hundreds of people since 1972. The farm's been in business a long time. Carmen and I came back in 2002, and we hire many, many local people, and we also have immigrant labor as well.
What is, you mentioned the immigrant labor, and how has that impacted your farm over the years?
Well, in agriculture, immigrant labor is up to 85% of the total workforce, and if it keeps our national security and our food safety secure, it's a very important part of agriculture, and I am here to work on immigration reform so that we can have a modernization ag labor workforce bill that will make sure that farmers have the labor that they need.
Has there been concerns over the new administration's mass deportation plan? Have you experienced that firsthand in the last few weeks?
I'm not worried about that because everything our farm does, we follow the rule of the law.
You talk about the border and fixing the border. Obviously, at the north, there is a northern border, and Tom Homan was at the Capitol last week talking about more that they wanted to do at the northern border. What do you think needs to happen at that northern border?
So, it's a humanitarian crisis at the northern border. It's very serious, and immigration reform is one of the major pieces of my platform. We have to secure the border. We have to deport criminals who are here illegally, and we must make sure that there's a secure legal labor force for not just agriculture, but hospitality, for construction, for healthcare, for forestry, and of course for farmers. And what I view as improvement to the border is making sure that our ICE agents, our Border Patrol agents have the resources they need and the funding that they need. And then they need to be able to communicate with state and local law enforcement to work together. Why can't they work together? It's critical that they can share information and secure our border. That's the best way to get it done.
You mentioned a crisis at the border. I believe that those are the words you used. Are people that you know, residents, other farmers, are they having issues with immigrants in that area of the state?
Actually, there are farmers on the northern land border who have found people walking through their property, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen, especially in the wintertime. Not only is it a problem having people come across, but it's a dangerous trek when it's 20 below zero and you're trying to get in. It's a humanitarian crisis. We need to work with Canada. We need to make sure that we take care of that northern border.
Is that sending more agents? I believe that's what Tom Homan said last week. He said, I want to send more people up there.
I agree. We should send more resources, more agents, and make sure that our federal and local and state law enforcement can communicate.
What about the legal system aspect of this? I know a lot of immigrant advocates would say we need to enhance that part of the system instead of getting ICE agents into communities. What do you think of that proposal?
Absolutely. As a dairy farmer in agriculture on the border, I know that our immigration system is broken. And making sure that we have enough judges to process these different cases is very important. I'd agree with that.
Okay, let's get to the tariff aspect here, because this is something that I asked Elise Stefanik about in September, because we knew this was on the table for this Trump administration, if elected at that time, and the impact it had on farmers the first time around. You are a farmer. I'm not a farmer.
Yeah.
Was there an impact the first time around?
I have to tell you, it was a serious impact. very serious impact. We, as a dairy farmer, which I can talk very clearly about, the retaliatory tariffs really hurt dairy farmers. That took money right out of our milk checks. So we were suffering. And then the costs of all of our inputs, fuel, electricity, fertilizer, grain, those things all went up. And we actually had dairy farmers committing suicide. Their wives were coming into the barn and finding their husbands dead. Oh. So at Agrimark, at our cooperative, we created a hotline for all of our members so that they could have a confidential phone call if they were feeling stressed out. And so then at the end of this 3-year period of trade wars, the administration gave financial support through the Commodity Credit Corporation, and that didn't nearly meet the deficit that had accrued over the previous 3 years. So farmers are very concerned that we're going to go through this again. It's just not necessary, and the Canadian border is very important. As a farmer, I'm already receiving emails and texts from livestock feed, livestock nutrition companies saying, you can expect your prices to go up. We're doing our best to keep prices down, but there's not much we can do. And our electricity bill is going to go up, our fuel bill is going to go up, and our fertilizer bill is going to go up. And what this does is it makes food more expensive at the grocery store. It translates right to costs at the dinner table for American families.
In the long term, they argue that at the end of the day, these tariffs will help incentivize business in the United States, incentivize production in the United States. Do you buy that?
Well, I do agree. Reciprocal tariffs with countries like China will bring back business to rural America in areas like the North Country. I do support reciprocal tariffs with certain countries that we have an unfair relationship with. Okay,
so you look at this holistically. How, as a farmer, can you make this work in the next couple of years? I guess what do you do to help offset some of these costs and to stay in business? As you mentioned last time, subsidies had to come from the federal government.
Mm-hmm. It is going to be very, very different. Sorry, very, very difficult. It's going to be the same situation. We're going to be trying to get as much out of our land as possible, as much out of our animals as possible, but it literally is going to be nearly impossible because farmers across the entire United States, the margins are so tight already, there's just no room for increased cost. And if there is increased cost, all of that gets put back on the consumer in increased food cost at the grocery store, which makes dinner more expensive in the house.
Let's get to some of the news from last week in regards to the resolution about the budget and keeping the government open. If you were in, I know it's in the Senate, but if you were in Chuck Schumer's shoes, would you have voted to keep the government open, voted yes on that bill?
Yes, I would have voted to keep the government open.
Why?
Because I think it's important. Americans need to have a consistent sense of life and what's going on. I think it's critical that we make sure that people continue to get their Social Security checks, continue to get their Medicare checks, and in my district, in the North Country, it was the right decision.
Even if there were even if you didn't like that bill? I mean, I think it's what Chuck Schumer said. He said, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but we're going to do other things to, I guess, to make up for it. Yeah. How difficult? I mean, there's got to be a difficult task.
It's a difficult task, but it's really important to compromise. And what I say a lot in the North Country, when I'm the only driveway on my road for 2 miles, okay?
Yeah.
When somebody goes off in the snow, they walk to my house sometimes and they say, hey, can you get my car out of the ditch? I go down with a tractor, I hook up a chain and I pull out their car because it's what is best for both of us. Let's get them out of the ditch. I don't ask them what their party affiliation is first. We need to work together. We need to bridge the divide. And then we get the car out, and at the basketball game on Friday night, we high five. Sometimes it's about getting things done that we can get done. That's really important.
Let's go to foreign policy really quickly here. We got a couple minutes to go, but obviously there has been a lot of consternation about Ukraine and the war there.
Yeah.
And I know the Republicans and Donald Trump have been very hesitant to support Ukraine, and as you saw the meeting in the Oval Office with the president of Ukraine. Would you have voted to keep funding Ukraine against Russia in this war and this invasion moving forward, if that were to be on the table, depending on these ceasefire talks?
This is a really, really simple issue for me. I am always on the side of a leader trying to protect the sovereignty of a democratically elected government. I am never on the side of a former communist KGB thug who's invading the sovereignty of an independent country. Full stop right there. I would continue to support Ukraine.
How do you feel about then Israel and Hamas?
Israel has the right to defend itself when attacked, and we need to make sure that we take care of innocent people and make sure that we cover all our bases on humanitarian aid for innocent people in Gaza. And if there's any discussion at a table, everybody should be at the table.
Why are you here? What's your motivation?
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
We got some of your ideas out there already, but what is the motivation right now?
Yeah, the motivation is, let me start at the beginning. So I'm a husband, 22 years. I have 3 boys, Miles, Truman, and Noah, 21, 19, and almost 18. Carmen and I went back to the farm that I grew up on. We bought a farm next door 22 years ago. And I started to get more and more active in our community. We grew the farm from 50 cows to 500 cows and 1,200 acres. And I got on the Lisbon Central School Board. I was president of the school board. I coached JV basketball at Lisbon Central School. Awesome experience. I became active in our dairy co-op, Agrimark. It's $1 billion dairy co-op throughout the Northeast, 450 dairy farmers. But when I got on, it was almost 1,200 dairy farmers. People are struggling. Carmen and I also started the Jewels of Life Foundation, which supports children from Syracuse to Plattsburgh that are suffering from pediatric cancer. And we are the premier information resource for them, because Carmen and I have met people and we can point people in the right direction. And it's all of those things that have shown me what's so amazing about the North Country. It's really the best district in the state, but I also know its struggles. As a farmer and small businessman, I know what it's like to try to make payroll every single week. It's really hard. Sometimes you're scratching your head saying, how am I going to pull this off? I know what it's like to take an aging uncle from Lisbon, New York, who just had a stroke this past June, to Syracuse 2.5 hours for routine doctor's appointments. It's unacceptable. We can do better. I know what it's like to farm on the border in a broken immigration system, which we talked about. I have those experiences. And I also know what it's like to try to plant crops in changing weather patterns. It's very, very hard. 10 years ago, I didn't plant soybeans. This year, I planted 300 acres of soybeans. It's unbelievable how the decisions we have to make to cover all these changes. And it's those experiences that have shown me that we need representation in the North Country. We have been forgotten by normal people. I want to be a person that has real experiences, not a politician. And I want to be an honest voice for freedom and fairness that represents my neighbors, my teachers, my coaches, my parents, my kids, my wife, everyone in the whole district in a fair and honest manner. It's really important to me.
What makes you different than the other Democratic candidates that have come through over the course of the last decades or so and been unsuccessful in representing this district?
Yeah, so my world, I have friends that are Republicans. I have friends that are Democrats. I am from the district. It doesn't matter to me what your party affiliation is. I want to make life better for you. I want to make life better for everybody in the district. I do not like this fake outrage that's meant to divide us. What we really probably agree on 90 to 95% of the same things. and we need to operate within the margins, and we need to get things done that we can get done instead of being distracted by all the noise.
Blake, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.